Hey friends, welcome back to another video. My name's Emma LaFave, and today I'm going to show you how to elevate your loose florals with some simple tips. Let's jump in. Okay, so today's video, I want to show you how to give your loose florals a bit more movement and try and steer them away from becoming too stiff and structured. Now obviously whatever kind of style you're going for, that's your own style, you can go with that. But if you're looking for a little bit more movement and flow in your loose florals, this is the video for you. So I'm just painting on the back of a piece of watercolor paper. This is my Saunders watercolor paper. I have my Winsor Newton professional watercolors, and then today I'm using those stroke brushes that I showed you guys in last week's video. I just really enjoy using them, but you can definitely do this with any kind of brush, a filbert, a round, whatever you want. I just kind of want to play with these a little bit more. Okay, so first I'm just going to start by wetting up my paints. And I'm going to start with my larger 1/2-inch stroke brush. So first I'm just going to show you kind of more of what I see, especially with beginners, or maybe what you're used to doing. So I want to try and use this buff titanium color just because it's really pretty. But we kind of tend to think that, especially I'm going to do my examples with like a daisy. So we tend to think there's a center to our flower, and then we just go, you know, straight out, and we do these petals. And when you have all of your petals looking very similar and kind of all moving the same way, our pieces tend to look a little bit more stiff. Now, are there flowers that look like this? Of course there are flowers that look like this. Some of them are just like perfectly round, you know, perfectly evenly spaced, but not all of them are. And a piece can look a little bit too structured when you tend to do all of your flowers this way. So what I want you to think is to give your flower a little bit of character by maybe having a petal being missed or bending a different way, or, you know, just a little bit more space in between some. You want to try to achieve a bit more of an asymmetrical look rather than something that's completely the same all over. Okay, so let's try it again and I'll show you what I mean. So, and I just did that little circle in the middle just to kind of give you an idea of where the stamen is. You don't have to do that. But I want you to try and make your petals a little bit more irregular. So I'm just using the side of this brush. I really love this brush. And I'm just doing light pressure, heavy pressure, light pressure, and I'm giving it a little bit of a twist when I kind of flick it out. Okay, and then I'm going to do another one, but I don't want it pointing like the same curve. Okay, maybe it's just slightly different. You can drag it towards or away. Maybe give a little bit of space there. Have a couple that are closer together. Some that are shorter. I don't love the look of that petal. There we go. And then make some of them shorter and give them a little bit of a curve. See how this one, I just did that one perspective. It was straight out going all the way around. This one I'm trying to curve the petals a bit more. Give them a bit of movement. Okay, instead of going straight out, you want to curve it a little bit. Make some of them a little bit thicker, some a little bit thinner, and give a little bit of space. See how it looks a little bit more whimsical that way? Okay, so there's an example of that one. Let's try it again, maybe doing a different perspective. So maybe like the side view. So this is what I see sometimes. Okay, where they're all straight. Petals going out one way, not a lot of curve. They get a little shorter. It doesn't look bad, but it just looks a little bit more stiff. Okay, so let's just try and give it a little bit more movement. Okay, so the longer petals, if our flower is pointing that top direction like we did for this one, the way it's pointing, those petals are going to be longer on that side and shorter on this side. But let's try and give it a little bit of movement just by curving our brush a bit. Okay, and again, you can start from the edge if you want. Give a little bit of space in between some. Some are a little bit longer, some are a little bit shorter. It's a little bit more irregular, and I just find that looks, you know, maybe on this side, it's kind of like pointed down. they're flopping to the side. I just tend to like the look a little bit more of some flowers that are just a little, they have a bit more character to them, if that makes any sense. And I find that really makes a difference when you're doing some loose florals, okay? So just try and twist your brush, curve it, move it around. Now what about a complete side view? Maybe of one that's just kind of bloomed, right? So we would tend to do just the side. They're all sticking straight, like that. Okay, we have these straight movements. Meh, right? Let's try and give it a little bit more, you know, oomph. Curve it. Have some that are a little bit smaller, thinner. Okay. And then, I know this kind of looks really weird right now, and this is a weird choice of color to do our flowers in, but once we add the centers, it's going to look a bit better, okay? So let's let those dry before we do any more to the actual flower. But the same goes for stems as well. So give a little bit more movement to your stems and to your leaves before they look a little bit too structured. So again, I'm just going to show you an example of what I see a bit more with some leaves that may be what's making your piece look a little bit too structured. So here we have our flower, and then I see this. Now, it's not bad. It's just that it's a little too straight, and in my opinion, it's a little too thick. Okay, so it looks like there's like this really blunt end right here that's kind of coming out of nowhere. It's very straight and it's very thick. And then when we do our leaves, you have the straight little stem and then this perfect little leaf, and it's just like, it just looks a little bit more elementary, just a little bit. Okay, so again, same here. Like that. It's not bad, but it just looks too blunt and structured. And then for this, you have that little kind of bottom piece that would be holding it together. Like that. Okay, so then I'm going to show you the difference you can make with just adding a little bit more curvature to your stems, as well as making it thinner so it just kind of flows a bit better. So I'm going to still use the same brush. This is my 1/4 inch stroke, and I really want to be super light-handed with my stroke, okay? So I want to kind of imagine, and almost kind of where it's coming from, be the lightest, because you don't want this blunt start. Okay, so I'm just going to use just the tip of it, and I'm going to curve it like that. You see that? It just looks a little bit more delicate, more dainty. And then for our leaf, I'm going to do, again, really thin. And see the angle of this? You get this more like V shape, where this one's just a little bit too, this is also a V shape, but it's just very rigid. You want a bit more of a curve. And then have fun with your leaves. They don't have to be these perfect leaves. What I want you to try is do light pressure, heavy pressure, curve your brush a little, twist it, give it a bit more movement. Okay? Just light pressure, heavy pressure, give it a twist. Like that. It just gives it a little bit more movement. You see that? But that really, really light, thin line really makes a huge difference. Okay, again. And what I'm doing with my hand, where I can achieve these really thin lines, I keep my wrist straight. I'm not moving my wrist. I anchor my hand down, like the padded part of my hand, really light, just barely touching, and then I move my whole arm so I can get this kind of movement. Always make sure it's curved. You want this stem to have a really nice curve to it. You don't want it to be too straight. Okay, and then again, you can just do your leaves. So light pressure, heavy pressure, twist it, light pressure. Ones that like kind of fold over, you can do the same kind of thing. So you go light pressure, heavy pressure, and then kind of flip it down and curve it a bit. I love doing that. Okay, and it just brings this whole new element to your paintings. And then lastly, this one, doing kind of like this little bottom bit, really thin. Again, that curve. And then you can even have like a leaf kind of going right in front. Again, just kind of curving it. Just give it some movement. Like that. Okay, it just makes all the difference. And then I also like to tend to grab a little bit of darker green and just kind of add it to the base of some of the leaves, just for a little bit more depth. While it's still wet, some of those have already dried. Or even if there's a curve underneath, you can add a little bit of darkness under there so it looks like it's curving over a bit more. See that? Okay, so now let's make sure that our flowers are dry before I show you just the difference in the middles. Okay, so for our stamen, the center of our flower, I find that can make a flower just absolutely pop. Right now they kind of look a little, just meh, especially with the color choice for today. But especially with daisies, you can really make it pop just by doing a little bit more shading. So a beginner may, just add some yellow to the center like this. Okay. They have their yellow like that. Now what I want you to try is add a little bit more to it by shading. So I will always start with our lightest color. So I'm starting with some lemon yellow, and I'm just gonna kind of fill it in like I did with those. Like that. And then I'll go back in with like a medium yellow. So like my cadmium yellow is kind of under here. And I'll just tap around the bottom. So pick kind of the bottom of your center of your flowers. So if it's pointing this way, maybe the bottom is right over here. And you're just going to kind of just do some little dots with this medium yellow. Okay, so you have the lightest at the top, medium yellow from the middle kind of to the bottom. You can make it a little bit more sparse towards the top, but you want that highlighted area at the top. Okay, same over here. Now it's already dried, so you're getting a bit more of a, what's it called? Just harsher, not harsher lines, but just more detailed lines or dots. But if you were doing this wet on wet, it would be a bit more of a blur or a blend to it. It's totally up to you what you want to do. Okay, I might even take a little bit of my lemon yellow, that or first original color, and just tap over the top just to get a little bit more texture, like that. So you have your light yellow, medium yellow. Then I like to use a yellow ochre, which is like a darker yellow. If you don't have yellow ochre, you could always mix a tiny bit of like dioxazine purple with a bit of your yellow, and that would do the same thing. And I like to bring this yellow to the bottom. Okay. And then lastly, I'll take some burnt umber. And if you find that when you're going back in, if it's still wet, if it's kind of taking over the whole thing, you might have too much water or paint on your brush. So a good rule of thumb just for water control, when you're picking up your color, always just tap it on your paper towel a little bit just to take off any excess water. And then right at the bottom, you can tap a little bit of that burnt umber. Okay, and see how it really brings that center together. Like it just gives it so much more depth. Now the thing that's missing from this flower is a bit more of a shadow or just separation on some of the petals. So one thing I like to do, so I'm going to take my 1/4 inch brush again. Once it's dry, I like to carve out some of the petals. And this is something that I've practiced more since I've been following my friend Jillian. Her channel is Jillian Boone Brush Movement, so definitely check her out. So once it's dry, you do another layer, and I'm just going to carve out some of the petals. So if there's 2 petals together, like here and here, and they're touching, I might just carve out one of them just for a little bit of separation. And I'm just going to do these little lines, and I have a bit more pigment on my brush of the same color. I'm just doing a little bit of separation, not a ton, just a little bit, but see how that already separated some of them? You can do a little bit of just like curves and stuff on some of the petals if you like. like that. Okay. And then especially these side ones, just a little bit more. Now, if you find that you didn't go light enough for your first round, which mine is kind of darker, you can always add like a little bit, maybe like a little bit of brown to it. And just kind of bring it a little bit closer to where that center is. Or you can even take a tinier brush, so I have my size 2 here. And what I'll do is like an even darker brown, or you could use a little bit of black. Just the tiniest amount, again, tapping it on my paper towel just so I don't have a ton. And I would just create some little tiny strokes coming from that center to just deepen it just a little bit. More so on the side where our shadow is. Okay, and at the base of this side view. And it just really kind of brings it all to life. Okay, so that's basically it. That's how I turn these more beginner looking flowers into a little bit more advanced, giving it a bit more movement, more shading, just with some simple tips. So let me know in the comments below if you like this and if you learned something, and I'll see you guys in our next video.